leader walks close to their people, good leaders learn to combine both transformational and transactional styles of leadership. Africa became a four-tier class structure. The colonial state needed loyalty. That way, the colonial state was able to neutralize much of the anticipated rebellion. When you deny a people basic education, you deny them freedom. The Sassoon family, they used to be known as the Rothschild of the East. These were not touched. These were entrepreneurs who were inspirational to the younger generation who are not touched. Surely, we must know that exporting to another person's market is the highest form of solidarity. Leaders create minimum conditions. We can speak of change, but we don't like change. We do all these things because we don't have the luxury of time. Ability to see comes from someone removing darkness. People who take risks often get high returns. Whatever you choose to do, enjoy it. My understanding of transformational leadership is that unique possession of unusual ability to project for a people far into the distance, that distance not yet clear to people, and in other terms we call it vision, and to compellingly communicate that vision very well, while at the same time a leader walks close to their people, feeling their pain, feeling their joy on the journey, and not get infected by the praise or the fear of those people. Praise or the fear of people is what I call the King Saul syndrome. This is named after the ancient Jewish king whose fear of people and his yearning to be respected diverted his purpose and took him off the throne. Transformational leaders also walk behind their people at the same time as they do from the front and from the side. This is to be able to see who's struggling when the leader walks behind their people, who's struggling, who needs encouragement, or who would replace those leaders when their time to leave beckons. Well, that walking behind is called being patient. In the old Greek language, that word patience is called hupomone, which means bearing up under, or endurance, or building staying power, all in order to see through an idea, catch on, and change a people. And by the way, all leaders that have led their countries or institutions and left them much better, they all practice this three-pronged approach: front, side, and back. They do that simultaneously with long suffering or patient calmness. Actually, good leaders learn to combine both transformational and transactional styles of leadership. Transactional being the ability to recognize that we often have to make strategic compromises, tactical, strategic compromises, in order to fulfill the needs of long-term transformation, or what I call wide lens angle change for society. There are three limiting causes standing in the way of increasing exports from Africa that I want to share with you. The first is historical, and on it, that historical fact, on it hang a number of factors. If you take an example of the United States of America, in the year 1902, small to medium enterprises, which had been mom and pop corner shops, where people knew each other, knew about the families of both their customers and the workers, These mom and pop stores were progressively being phased out. There was a consolidation of big conglomerates pressing for continent-wide market and export opportunities that were emerging, and along with them, there was rapid unionization, workers creating trade unions, well-organized industrial action, along with the rapacious appetite by a new monopolist capitalist class that was looking for raw materials to produce products for both domestic and international markets. The US president at the time, I think, was called Theodore Roosevelt. He had to confront coal miners in a strike in 1902 because the anger of workers was rising against the likes of J.P. Morgan's monopoly of transportation infrastructure, coal mines, and money. This is context, because in Uganda at that same time, 1902, the colonial state began dismantling forms of pre-industrial barter trade, dismantling artisanal skill sets that we had. They started the denigration of the big cultural stock we had built from the year 1500 AD. They were undermining what I call embedded traditional or rudimentary manufacturing knowledge, such as making boats for fishing, making cloth out of the bark of a tree, making fighting tools, and many others. All these internal capabilities were being undermined at a time when there was consolidation in the West. You might know, those of you who like history like me, you might know that we were already smelting iron ore in blast furnaces in the kingdom of Meroe in present-day Sudan at the confluence of the Blue and White Nile from the year 800 BC. We were making iron 800 BC. Now, all this capability that had been passed on for centuries was systematically destroyed, and Uganda, and in general Africa, became a four-tier class structure that I want to share with you so that you have context on the matter of why we are low exporters. The four-tier structures were the following. The first category were sons, please mark, sons, not daughters, sons of chiefs and priests. These had privileged access to education, and they in turn formed the bulk of the cadreship of the colonial and neo-colonial state. The public service, our first public service under Uganda as a colony and beyond, were sons of chiefs and priests. This group did not serve the intrinsic African interest. They rather served their masters. After all, their education had formed their worldview, and their worldview was externally looking. It cared little about the common person's needs and interests. It was the protection of the elite class that this education gave them. The second cluster, the second category, was an illiterate army from acephalous societies. Acephalous societies mean those places where African groups lived but didn't have centralized kingdoms, kings, or rulers. The large kingdoms that first made contact with the West, the late Professor Ali Mazrui used to call them, quote, hinterland tribes. These were groups like the Kikuyus, the Wanyoros, the Wagandas here, the Igbos of Nigeria, the Zulus of South Africa, the Yorubas, the Ndebeles and the Shonas, and many like that. He used to call those hinterland tribes. The colonial state needed loyalty, not to the kings, for the kings had their own armies, but they needed loyalty to itself and its functionaries. So the colonial rulers, therefore, recruited from tribes that had no centralized administration. This is very important, because you don't build royalty based on another person's royalty. The colonialists needed their own. Now, these groups that the colonialists used, for example, in Uganda or DRC or South Sudan, there's a group of the Luos called the Kakwas that stride those three countries, South Sudan, Congo and Uganda. There were groups like the Yaos, these were in Malawi. There are groups like the Gurkhas in Myanmar, or what we call Burma. That way, the colonial state was able to neutralize much of the anticipated rebellion in the hinterland by playing divide and rule between groups. Leaders create minimum conditions. We can speak of change, but we don't like change. We do all these things because we don't have the luxury of time. Ability to see comes from someone removing darkness. People who take risks often get high returns. Whatever you choose to do, enjoy it.